Hello everyone, this is Bichao and welcome back to my channel. Now today we'll be starting off by talking about relationships. You see, relationships are basically of two kinds. The first is where the relation is a lot more casual, people are just together to have some fun, nothing is too serious and they don't have a long lifetime goal. And in this typical kind of a relationship, people when they're done or when they're had enough with each other, they sort of move on and continue along with their life. The second kind of relationship is where two people come together and they actually come together thinking about the long term. They want to make decisions together, decisions that will impact their life and decisions that will stay with them for a long period of time, and that will basically sort of change not just one person's life but both of them together, where there are compromises, there are things where one person doesn't like, while there are things which the other person doesn't like, but they somehow bring all of that together and live life together as one single unit or as one single identity. But why are we talking about this now? The reason is that my relation with the Polo has somewhat been similar over the last 3-4 years, where it's been more of a love and hate kind of a relation, or you can say a long-term relation, and it's kind of worked out exactly how I'd imagined it to be, because I wanted the Polo to be a long-term companion with us in the family, something which we can rely on entirely, but at the same time it's not exactly something which we totally love or totally hate. And let's get into more details of that. Now, there are good things as well as bad things about the Polo, and some of those bad things in my generation of the car have already been updated and have made better over a period of time with the latest updates. But one thing that has remained same over these entire generation or over these years is that even today in 2021, if you're looking to buy a reliable car which is going to give you that peace of mind and decent amount of pleasure of driving, in that particular segment, I think the Polo is still the kind of car that you de facto go towards. Now, before we move ahead, I want to make one misconception very clear, that the Polo GT TSI is not a performance hatchback. It is not a hot hatchback by any means. A lot of people out there, especially the younger ones in you, think that the Polo GT TSI is a performance hatchback or a hot hatch. It's of course a hatchback which you can upgrade with a lot of parts and accessories that are available out there to make it faster. But in its stock form, it is not a performance hatchback, and I would really request most of you people out there to please erase that misconception out of your mind, because a hot hatchback typically is a car which is powerful and fun enough that can go and compete with much more faster and more expensive luxury or performance cars like BMWs and Audis. The Polo GT TSI isn't that. What it is a decently comfortable and a very convenient automatic gearbox car that you can drive in the city. That said, however, if you are looking to buy a Polo GT TSI and you want to modify it or you want to tune it, there are numerous number of options which are available for your disposal, where you can tune the heck out of this car, get it up to 140, 150 horsepower, still keeping the car quite reliable for day-to-day use as well. So in that way, the GT TSI definitely makes sense, but again, in its stock form, in no ways is it a hot hatchback. So a lot of you will question that if it is not the best car in a lot of different segments and at the same time it is not the most performance oriented hot hatchback as well, why would you still recommend it in 2021? Well, the reason behind it is that the Polo, in my opinion, even in 2021 is still one of the most all-rounded cars that can do a little bit of everything for you. Simply put, it's the best all-rounder that does a little bit of everything very well, while offering the most usable features that cover most of your needs most of the time. The engine in the Polo GT isn't very powerful. The gearbox that is there is also not overly reliable, but both of these things sort of come together to give you a very comfortable and convenient sort of an experience in the city, where you don't have to manually go through gears every time you're stuck in traffic. The steering also isn't very precise, but it works well when you're driving in the city and also offers decent amount of fun when you're driving around corners. What I mean to say is that most of the things in this car are average, but since this is a European car and specifically a German car, The overall build quality, the fit and finish, and the way the parts of this car have been designed sort of keep it and make it above average than the rest of the things that are available in the country. And for many people, actually, that build quality is one of the biggest reasons why they do buy a German or a European car. And in that regards, I must say that I had a 2012 Vento, and from that Vento, I've already noticed that the 2018 Polo has reduced its build quality hugely. But still, even after that, its build quality is way far more superior than a lot of other cars out there. So VW kind of understood that they are over engineering their cars for the Indian standards, and they sort of reduce the build quality, but at the same time their build quality is still way above whatever else you can find in this particular segment. Ours being the 2018 model, we've got an updated touchscreen infotainment system in the car, which gives us the option for Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, as well as the option to connect devices via Bluetooth. And also I can have an option to plug in an additional reverse parking camera if I need to. We also got the updated steering wheel that includes new design for the button layouts. And while the digital information display isn't of the same quality that you'll see on other cars, by that I mean that it is not like a very fancy looking colorful cluster. It's just a simple digital layout. It is still giving you most of the information that you need. It gives you all the information that is required for a driver when they are driving, like you get your distance to empty, you get your speed, you get both the trip meters, you get the temperature of the engine, and the service interval in which your car needs to be serviced as well. It's not fancy by any means, but it is functional. Driving around town is also an okay experience. Hang on. Who am I kidding here? Driving around in the Polo is not a very good experience. There are a couple of reasons behind that. First of all, the suspensions that are set up in the car are kind of weird. They are never soft enough to absorb all the bumps, while at the same time they're not stiff enough to cause you discomfort. It's weird, okay? It's like for some reason Volkswagen wants you to be uncomfortable in this car, because I don't understand. Skoda has been in India for the same amount, actually longer than VW, and they have suspensions where they have understood how to tune them perfectly for Indian roads. Why doesn't VW just go to Skoda and get the suspensions and put it on their car? That said though, both the Polo as well as the Vento have excellent suspension ride quality when they are on the highway or when they are on long distance journeys. No complaints absolutely over there. Highways, these cars are ultimately stable. They feel very, very rock solid when either you're on a straight line or if you're taking corners at highway speeds. They feel absolutely brilliant. It's the city, potholes, speed breakers, bad and broken patches of road where I think they need to be a little more pliant, a little more compliant. And for whatever reason, VW keeps ignoring their suspension setup or doesn't want to understand from Skoda. It kind of takes me back to my whole relationship theory. For example, your wife or your girlfriend tells you that you need to groom properly and you should dress up nicely before going and meeting somebody important, or going and representing yourself out there in the public, and you completely ignore that advice and turn up looking like a proper ape man from 3000 years ago. This is exactly that. The second biggest problem I have with the Polo GT TSI is its DSG gearbox. I mean, it does not make any sense. First of all, the gearbox is very, very weird and very awkward when it's responding to you with its inputs between first, second and third gear, where it always goops up between second and third whenever it's shifting down from the third gear to the second gear, or it's downshifting from the second to the first gear. It either gets delayed or it just suddenly skips a gear. It just works very erratically. It's like you've given a 3-year-old child to solve the square root of 50, what it's going to be, and give an answer within 10 seconds. It just gets lost in its calculations, and it's a very jerky and very uncomfortable experience when you're sitting in the car. And besides that, putting a overcomplicated, very heavy, very cumbersome dual clutch gearbox in a 1.2 liter engine car, how does that make sense? Are you going to go drag racing in this car every day? No. Are you going to take it out on the track day every day? No. You're going to use this car 99.9% of the time on city street roads, where even a torque converter makes absolutely perfect sense. And thankfully, Volkswagen has finally understood this part, and they have fitted the recent car, the latest model, with a torque converter. After all that ignorance of keeping that DSG in that car, they've finally taken it out and given people a much more reliable, a much more normal, a much more comfortable for day-to-day use torque converter. Of course, there will be a lot of people who will be still cribbing that, you know, oh, the DSG is gone, that quick fast shifting of the car is gone, and you know, when they upgrade their car, it will make all the difference. Yes, probably yes, but how many of the people who are buying Polo GT TSIs out there are going to do that? Probably a very small percent, like 0.1 or maybe 1% of the total GT TSI owners are eventually going to end up doing that. So it is in benefit of the majority of people that the GT TSI now comes with a torque converter. And if you go online and if you check the drag race results between the old GT TSI and the new GT TSI with the torque converter, there's not even more than 0.2 or 0.3 of a second difference compared to the stock car with each other. So it really doesn't make that much sense, and it's much better losing that bulky, unreliable, clunky, overcomplicated, heavy gearbox for something which is way more simpler, way more easier to maintain, and much more reliable over a long period of time. That said, however, I still strongly feel that the Polo GT TSI is a great car in its segment, only because of how good it's built overall. Like, what I mean to say is, you know, that after 4 or 5 years or even 6 years of constant use, like I used my Vento for 8 years, okay, and even after such a long period of use, there was not a single rattle in my car. In comparison to that, I had a Swift before that, and my Swift after 15,000 kilometers started rattling all the way till 99,000 kilometers when I finally sold it. The car never left me without rattling. It was always rattling, and it just keeps screwing with your head, man. My Vento, I drove for 96,000 kilometers before I sold it. In that 96,000 kilometers in 8 years, the car had 0 rattles on the inside. It is such a well-built car on the inside. And to give you an example of the build quality, we were once in a mall parking lot where we were trying to find a parking spot, and there was a Honda City driver in front of us. While we were crawling our way to find a parking, this Honda City guy doesn't look behind and suddenly decides to reverse at full speed. This guy comes full speed and whacks into my car from the front, and guess what happened? Apart from my car having a few small scratches on the bumper, absolutely nothing. At the same time, the Honda City guy's entire rear bumper had collapsed on one side. It was only held by 2 hooks on one side. The rest of the entire bumper had completely collapsed and fallen apart from the car. That is the kind of difference in the build quality between a Volkswagen or any other car, Japanese or Korean. So for everyone who's still contemplating whether to buy a Polo or any other car in today's day in that particular segment, I would still say go for the Polo hand over heart. It's a great car, especially if you're looking for a long term with the car. If you're looking for a couple of years, maybe it doesn't make so much sense, because the car is not going to pay you back in return for a very small period of time, considering its depreciation and its overall use that you're going to have in a short period of time. But if you're looking to keep the car for a long time, like how I did with the Vento, where I kept it for 8 years, I'm not saying that it is a perfect car. It does have its shortcomings, but those shortcomings are very quickly compensated by all the great build quality this car has. I hope you like this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Till then, ciao.